Welcome to the pre-course video for Transfer Pricing 1 of a 2-course semester that includes also Transfer Pricing 2. This pre-course video is to discuss and go through the syllabus to make sure that we're all on the same page when we start January 13th. I'm Professor William Burns, and this is semester Spring 20, Week 1. And as we begin every Texas A&M class and meeting, howdy! I welcome you, for those of you who are new to the program, and for the continuing students in the program, I'm going to spend some time in our first meeting on Wednesday, 8 a.m. Texas time, and I'll show you the logistics of that, how we're going to do that with Zoom. But I'm going to spend some time in that first meeting explaining some of the interesting aspects of Texas A&M, such as our howdy, but where we can find information about, by example, football games. That's a fall semester, but some of the camaraderie that makes Aggies Aggies. I'll also spend some time introducing you to each other by you using your webcams. But I'll put that off until we get to our Zoom information later on in this recorded lecture. Now let's turn to our main agenda item. Keep calm and read the syllabus. I've posted the syllabus in the eCampus as well as backed it up on the G Drive. And in a moment, we're going to explore how to access the eCampus if you haven't done so already, and also, of course, how to access the backup files on the G Drive. But let us first look at perhaps the most important aspect of the course. Who are the faculty actually teaching you and walking you through the learning objectives? Texas A&M faculty across the entire university, regardless of unit, whether it be the law school, May School of Business, the Bush School of Government, you'll be able to search and find them all through the faculty and staff main campus. You see it in the slide in front of you what to look for, but the main campus website for faculty and staff. I'm going to lead you through the 4 faculty who are going to be engaged with you in transfer pricing course number 1. In a pre-course video for transfer pricing course number 2, I'll introduce you to those faculty separately. So the lead professor and the author of your treatise materials that we're going to study in this course is, well, me. So my name is William Burns. I'm at the law school. I'm also affiliated with the Texas A&M Energy Institute, as well as its Data Sciences Center. If you are a residential student participating online in this course, and I'm specifically speaking to my JD students, my office is number 164, but to make it easy, it's just the one behind Student Services in your Howdy area. My telephone number at the office is on the slide, as well as my email address. You can connect with me and the other faculty on LinkedIn, and I encourage you to do that, so you're going to see their LinkedIn profile connections on each of their forthcoming slides. I also think it is important for you to join our 2 LinkedIn groups. The first LinkedIn group is International Tax Planning Professionals, which is a group I created and now has over 26,000 tax professionals, most over 10 years experience, who use it to network for jobs and with each other, by example, notifying of what conferences they're going to be at and so forth. It's also somewhat of a news service where we post interesting articles for each other. My colleague here at Texas A&M is Dr. Lorraine Eden. She's an economist and renowned in the field of transfer pricing. She's at May's Business School as an emeritus faculty member, having just retired, but she is also a faculty member here at the School of Law, specifically working with me on the transfer pricing course and other transfer pricing research as part of our international tax program. So for those who were in the international tax and tax treaties courses in fall, you've already met Lorraine in the courses. She's very generous with her time, and you'll see her again this semester in both courses. Our third course professor who will be leading case studies with Lorraine is Dr. George Salas. Dr. George Salas and I have known each other for over 2 decades when he decided to experiment with what online education was by signing up for one of my initial offerings of this exact course at another institution. I think the year was 1998. At that time, he was an academic and a dean, actually, of a college at a university. Since that time, George has become the principal economist and the tax policy advisor of Vertex. Vertex, if you're unaware, is one of the largest, if not the largest, tax software firm in the United States, and with offices worldwide. I think it has over $1 billion of software licensing revenues. If you want to connect with George, his LinkedIn address is on the slide. And George is going to be not just leading 3 case studies, but also providing us, for those who may need a refresher, even like myself, but especially for my JD students who may not have economics background, he's going to provide us some basic overview of what econometrics looks like. George and I, after he had graduated from my course, but again, he was already a PhD and had his economics background, and he was really, I think, more interested in the way of teaching as opposed to the substance, which he knew mostly. Him and I began teaching this course together for many years, for over a decade, and including econometric modules and so forth. Okay, so George is our third professor. Now let's move on to our fourth and final for this course. You'll recognize him, Dr. Bruno da Silva, for those of you who were in our fall courses of international tax and tax treaties. Yes, this is the same Bruno. Bruno and I co-taught those, both of those courses for the 14 weeks. Bruno is a tax lawyer at Loyens & Loeff. Loyens & Loeff is the largest law firm on continental Europe and highly specialized in tax. It's perhaps, if not, it's one of the best known international tax firms. Bruno, for our purposes of transfer pricing, more importantly, is the legal advisor of the Financial Services Bureau of China PRC, Special Administrative Region, SAR, Macau. If you're not aware, Macau still uses Portuguese as a former Portuguese colony. So Bruno spends a substantial amount of time in China and Macau because he represents Macau at various, by example, intergovernmental organizations. We call those by the acronym IGO, such as the OECD, the United Nations International Tax Committee, among others. I encourage you, if you have not already, to link up with Bruno through LinkedIn, and you'll see on the slide before you his profile link. In the syllabus, you will have found, if you have not read it already, that each faculty member's email address is in the very top of the information. Now let's look at our learning objectives this semester. I have 2 slides for those to see where we're going, and then we're going to discuss what tools and methods we're going to use to get you there. So faculty are an important aspect because they're the ones who are the subject matter experts building and leading the case studies. I'm the, let's call it, facilitator, but they'll be the moderator. They'll be in the forefront of building and then leading you on the case studies, and I have slides on how that's going to work for those of you who are not already in the program. So our learning goals of transfer pricing semester slide 1, and I say the semester because I've combined the goals of course 1 and 2. Obviously, you're going to come out understanding the general concepts of transfer pricing, which requires that we examine the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. Generally, we use an acronym like TPG in writing, and the Global Forum BEPS project. BEPS stands for Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. It's an OECD project, and we'll discuss that later in the course for those of you who did not already do a deep dive into it in fall semester with us. But also, we are in the United States, we're a U.S. law school, and the U.S. transfer pricing rules are still, they're certainly the most important rules of any country's rules in the world. So we're going to become familiar with the transfer pricing, what we call the Internal Revenue Code, our tax law section 482, as well as a sister section 367D, and the corresponding regulations to enact to implement those code sections. We're going to contrast economic, functional, supply chain, and value chain analysis. For those of you who are inexperienced with this field, those may not mean anything to you at the moment, but when we finish this course, you'll be able to not just describe, but contrast each type and why one is well different than another, but why one may have better for some things and less good for other things. But they are common terms used in other business aspects. So by example, if you studied managerial sciences as an undergrad, and maybe that undergrad degree was 20 years ago, but you still studied supply chain. Well, we're going to look at supply chain in a different, call it transfer pricing perspective, especially more modernized for value chain analysis. Okay, we're going to have a big data economic comparability analysis. What's that mean? Well, to understand transfer pricing, we're going to have to understand financial ratio and profit level indicators. We call those PLI concepts. Key performance indicators, KPIs. If you're in business or finance, certainly you use KPIs in that aspect. We're going to use them, but we're going to use them in a different valuation comparability aspect. Moving on to my next slide, we're going to be looking at, not doing a deep dive into each of them, but we're going to be looking at different valuation methods. We're going to do a deep dive, but into the transfer pricing valuation methods, as opposed to, by example, cost accounting, managerial accounting, and financial accounting valuation methods. But we will mention them and contrast them so you can see some of the differences, like qualitative versus quantitative. Is it for public investor information? Is it for managerial decisions? Is it, and so on. We're going to value risk because modern transfer pricing requires an extensive risk analysis. It's not that transfer pricing in economics didn't always require a risk analysis. It's that the focus and the delineation, or let's call it methodology, of how to undertake that risk analysis has been better defined and refined over the past decade. So we're going to spend a lot of time actually on risk, which makes appropriate sense since we're under the guidance of a risk management program. Intangibles and hard to value intangibles, HTVI is the acronym given that, is most of the action in transfer pricing. Now, digital taxation, of course, has gotten a lot of press, but digital taxation on the good side is much more of a nexus, or what we call a jurisdictional problem that we studied in international tax and tax treaties extensively, and actually submitted comments to the OECD Pillar 1 process. In the context of intangibles, we're going to be looking a lot at residuals and or what I call the stuff left over after we've done the normal valuation methods. And we're going to be looking at how to um, allocate or apportion those amongst the global value chain of an enterprise. We're going to look at cost contribution arrangements and platform contributions, PTCs, CCAs are the acronyms for those. Permanent establishments in Article 7, which is going to look at head office to branch, and how do we look at the transfer of goods, services, and intangibles from the head office or from the branch to the head office. How do we best value those transactions to be compliant with transfer pricing rules. I already mentioned the digital tax initiatives that we'll look at again, the same as we covered in international tax and tax treaties, except this time we'll be specifically focused on the transfer pricing aspects of Pillar 1. We're going to touch on country by country reporting, but we are not going to do a deep dive in this course. Country by country reporting, APA mutual agreement process, and the transfer pricing risk and mitigation, we're mentioning it in this course for awareness purposes, but those issues will be dealt with in depth and specifically in the context of all international tax risk management, which is a course we hold during summer called International Tax Risk Management. Now let me turn to our books and materials. We have our faculty who are designing and leading our case studies, but to prepare you, to give you a foundational resource of information to approach our case studies, especially for those of you all who are not deeply experienced with transfer pricing, we're going to be using treatises, very in-depth, analyze treatises. Don't worry, you don't have to buy anything. I write them. And I write them with support and help of other outside contributors like our faculty. The transfer pricing treatise I just fully revised from page 1 to page literally 2000. Fully new table of contents, new material, everything. I just did that, so it's just actually been published this past month. I think it was December 22nd or 23rd. I think it was December 22nd. It was 2 years anniversary of the Tax Cuts and Job Act being passed by Congress. Anyway, we're also going to pull from some materials of taxation of intellectual property and technology, another one of my treatises, because that deals specifically with intangibles. And finally, we're going to have some session discussions and a case study on oil and gas, and so we're going to pull from the oil and gas treaty in that respect. I'm providing you the excerpted what you need to read within the eCampus and backed up on the G Drive. Those will be in a PDF. However, you have access to the actual treatises, the original materials with all the links working to the source materials and to other treatises within where? LexisNexis. So in a future slide, we'll see the library, and for those of you who are new and have not yet set up a Lexis account, you'll have the library page. You would contact them, and using Lexis, you'll be able to access not just these, but all LexisNexis with your law student account. I know it's weird if you're a professional who has Lexis at the office and you're like, law student account. Yeah, we actually probably have more access to some areas than you might at work, and then y'all would have access to other areas that we might not find relevant for a law school or academic setting. In general, though, LexisNexis access is general the same. We also are going to be using the OECD guidelines and the practice manual on transfer pricing of the United Nations. The OECD guidelines are available to you through the university library. You can download the actual guidelines and read them there, but they're also publicly available for reading. You can't just download off the OECD website. They charge because that's how they make money. But through your university library, which we'll see that slide momentarily, you have access to all the OECD materials in the OECD library. The United Nations Practical Manual on Transfer Pricing is available off their website, but we're going to post it for you to make life easy in your eCampus as well as your Google documents. So no worries, you don't have to go search and find anything. Also, both the OECD guidelines and the manual are analyzed in my treatises. So while we are going to strongly encourage you to read the OECD commentary and the corresponding UN commentary, for those of you who are extremely busy at work and you are a practicing transfer pricing practitioner, then I have done the heavy lifting already for you with citation to the exact point in either the OECD guidelines or the UN manual. I've done that in my treatise. So you could avoid, if time is precious, then you could avoid much of the reading of the commentary. Again, I've done the heavy lifting and analyzed it and put what's like really sifted and boiled it down in the treatise for you. Now let's turn to where is our eCampus, this eClassroom. So on your screen, on the slide, and in the PDF that I'm posted to both eCampus and the Google documents, and perhaps on the video, but I won't know it works until I make the video and click on it. I've embedded the link to the eCampus. Now, the way I find eCampus, and I don't know, this is probably not the most efficient way, but I just go onto Google and I type in TAMU eCampus, and because I've searched it and found it once, it's always the first link on my Google query list. But regardless, I could save it to favorites or what have you. As you see on the screen before you, to log into eCampus, so that would be a normal process to access the materials. But of course, to log into eCampus, you're going to need to have a Texas A&M University ID. We call that a UIN acronym, University Identification Number, UIN. And with your UIN, you'll set up a username, by example, your name or whatever, so just some username, which will become your email address also. So let's not go too crazy with our usernames. Might scare people. They might not open your emails. And then, of course, your UIN and an access of email password. So in eCampus, you'll also find eCampus help, support. Well, you see on the screen before you get help for eCampus, you would click that. They have videos. They have, type in your question, and it has a frequently asked questions page, or it has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day a year. Now, I didn't call them on Christmas, so I don't know that's exactly accurate, but that's how they advertise it. They do have that help, and that's actual Texas A&M IT on campus, main campus help of IT students, other student support service people, and obviously professionals who manage the IT systems here at Texas A&M. It's important to actually use the correct pathway for IT support for the function you're looking IT support for. So by example, go to the eCampus help IT as opposed to just general IT for email when you're dealing with eCampus. It's not that you can't, but they're going to have to forward you to the people who are in the know. For simple questions, tier 1, call it, really easy questions, yeah, everyone will be able to, just go to this web page. But for the more complicated questions, you need to be with the people who work with that blend of software all the time, and thus, it'll save you time really. For eCampus help, go to the eCampus page, use that IT help. For the email IT help, we'll see that momentarily, go to that page, and so on. But they can transfer you. It's all the same IT support office. It's just about transferring you to the relevant sections. And we're the second largest, or for even now maybe the largest university in the United States, public university. So we're talking about some, pretty big operations, and we have over 70,000 students. And I don't even know how many online students now, but it's in the thousands. So, it's not like a small university or something where it's like, oh, they only have 4 or 5 people working. It's an operation. So again, I encourage you to go through the correct avenue, because they're not literally just sitting next to each other and they can go, hey, can you help this person? It's a floor of a building or 2 floors. Once you're accessed eCampus, you'll see your course screens, and I want you to go into your discussion board first thing, before even looking at the syllabus. Go in your discussion board, click Social Biography Forum, and type in or upload a social biography. My example is already included. As you see, within this forum, you will type in or upload a 300 to 500 word description of your life and yourself. Professor Burns' example starts us off. I want you to do that first thing before the course starts. I've been really good over my 25 years of online education. That's right, 25, since 1994. I guess we're in 2020, 26 years. At creating strong, cohesive networks for my online students. Nobody's alone, nobody's an island, and here at Texas A&M, everybody's an Aggie. So if you ask the students who have already suffered me in fall International Tax and Tax Treaties 1 and 2, ask them, and you're going to find that they're going to tell you they got some pretty good relationship and networking with each other going on, some pretty strong, what we call sticky relationships. But we start that process not on LinkedIn. We start that process here with our social biography. So please do it before we get to class next Wednesday, January 15th, again at 8 a.m. We'll see the Zoom slide in a moment, but the reason being is that I'm going to read your social biographies, and I'm going to facilitate the discussion by having each person introduce himself, but also, if you're a little shy or you don't know what to say, I'm going to probe you with your social biography. Hey, Mrs. Smith, you said you have a collie. Is it a male or female? Whatever. So you'll just put in your social biography, please. Now, I mentioned we're going to have a backup in Google Drive. I'm going to add each person in the course into the, type your email address into my Google Drive. I prefer you give me your TAMU or Gmail address because it works easiest with Google Drive. So if you didn't know this, your TAMU address is actually managed by Google. Yes, it's a Texas A&M address, but it's the system for students, because we have 70,000 a year, and with 500,000 alumni. That's been Google has some kind of academic partnerships where they manage it for universities, and it also gives you access to all the Google platform of Google Word and Google Excel and Google this and Google that through your TAMU address. So I don't want to get into that specifically right now. It's just that you will have a link sent to you from your Google Drive. If you've never used Google Drive, just click the link, and I'm going to show you in a moment what that's going to look like, but it's a backup. So there's nothing in here that's not also in your eCampus, but sometimes, eCampus, I have to remember my username and password, or I'm not able to use my eCampus app on my phone very well. I am, okay, but you have eCampus, which is Blackboard, on your phone, and I access it on the phone, so I know you can. But anyway, G Drive is a lot easier. So if you want to just cut to the chase and get simple, you can also download your documents in G Drive. So that's what it's going to look like when you access the G Drive. You're going to have each week broken down. So this is basically an exact replica of your eCampus courses. On the side of the eCampus course, it had week 1, week 2, week 3, and what the topic was. This one, instead of having what the topic is, week 1 is arm's length, it has who the teacher is. So week 1 is Dr. Bruno da Silva. Week 2 is Dr. Lorraine Eden, as you see on the slide. This is in your syllabus. So at the end of your syllabus, it has week 1 through 6 for course 1, and for course 2, week 1 through 6, with who is the professor for that week and what are they teaching. Now, what's the learning method? How are we going to be using, what tools are we going to be using to achieve our learning outcomes? We're using a flipped classroom approach. So by example, this video with going over some slides. Now, the videos in general, we'll try and keep them, between 10 minutes, well, 10 minutes is a general rule, 7 minutes is actually the rule, but we'll try and keep it to that point. But the reality is, as we prepare for this semester, it's easier for us to move through the entire PowerPoint for that topic area, even if it's 30 minutes, God forbid 45 minutes, and upload that and let the Texas A&M multimedia team, or we call them instructional designers, cut and paste and edit and make them look fancy and put, I always say, dancing bears, but to put, all the fancy bells and whistles later, for a later year. For right now, just like we did in fall, we're going to try and keep it simple, like I'm doing right now. No bells and whistles, no music background. I imagine in a future year, you're going to have the Aggie war song starting every, week's introduction video. But for right now, no, you just get my radio voice. So every week you're going to have, obviously, as I've already said, the treatises to read, but you're going to have PowerPoint, like you see now, or several PowerPoints, and the PowerPoints are going to be narrated and used in the analysis to describe the case study by your course professor for that week. So week 1's PowerPoint will be Bruno da Silva, who will be providing his videos for that on January 13th and this coming Monday, and so on for the other professors. For those of you who are already in fall semester, it's the exact same, works the exact same. After you've watched the videos, and again, the videos include the PowerPoints, but you'll have the PowerPoints separately if you want to go through those on your own. You've read the materials, and in the first semester, I was also doing some audio podcasts. I'll probably continue that without video. And the reason is the student feedback was that they actually listen to those like in the car or at the gym or whatever. And so I think I'll continue those instead of me just doing these like video PowerPoints. So after you've done that, you'll be looking at the case study material. So your course professor for the week, as I said, Bruno, for the first week, will have a case study on arm's length. And at this stage, we're actually still discussing, we're building the course, and the course is going to evolve over the semester, just like in fall. And so I'm still discussing with Bruno he has dozens of case studies. He's been teaching for a decade. He does so much client work in the field, and as I said, represents even Macau. So he has all this, practical case study experience. But which one is the right one? And so that also depends on what's the final enrollment number. Some case studies are, better for like large groups where we have 20 students and we're dividing you, or we prefer 21 because we like to use groups of 3, but 7 groups of 3, whereas other case studies are better for, if we have small enrollment, like 3 groups of 3 or 4 groups of 3, whatever. So so that process will unfold, but you'll always have the case study obviously a couple days before the week begins, and we'll discuss this process in our first class discussion section next Wednesday, January 15th. But like fall, you'll have groups, teams, team-based learning, TBL, team-based learning. We're going to put you in groups. And this semester, I am going to switch the groups up, so you will get to experience different people. But your group will be a group for, let's say, 3 weeks, and then you'll, in that group, you'll use your Zoom account to meet with each other. So let me just go to that. The Zoom account. You'll set up a Zoom account if you haven't already by going to the Zoom webpage. Again, the way I find it each time, I just Google Zoom, TAMU. Keep my life simple, but then you could save it as your favorites. All students have staff have a Zoom account, so you see I've already marked the Students tab here in Zoom. You click a link, set up my account. You put in your username, I think, for the university, not your UIN, and it populates with your email address, your password, and voila, you have a Zoom account. If you've never used Zoom, I mean, we tested it out, stress tested under the most extreme circumstances in fall. China blocks Zoom, so you can VPN to Zoom through China, and our Shanghai student was, at an airport waiting for his plane, so that's not the best bandwidth, going through a VPN on his phone, but in video. Bruno was doing the same thing, actually, because Bruno was over there at a government meeting and led a video lecture. A plane was landing, I turned on, while it was still landing, Zoom for the start of the class, and it never, in 3-hour class that one was, we just kept on. The discussion was very interesting. We wanted to keep having it. You don't have to stay for 3 hours for Zoom. I tell people it's 90 minutes to 2 hours. But we had some students who, said, listen, I can do 90 minutes, but then I have to go to client meeting or I have to go to sleep because I'm in, Japan. And that's fine. These are discussions, not lectures. And if you can stay and be part of the discussion, and why did they last 3 hours? Not because I said, hey, you must stay, but because I continue to moderate and facilitate, and if we're having a deep discussion, I'll stay with it as long as I can, and we'll keep until we get to wherever we get. So it's not you're not forced to, but we have many. I'll just say most of our lectures went almost 2 hours, if not over 2 hours. It even became a joke by the end, like how far could we, how long would it be? And but again, it was just because we had interesting discussions, because everybody's a practitioner. And so people have their own client war stories or their own war stories from their company, or they want to help, figure stuff out. Here's my, example scenario sanitized. I'd like to get some feedback. And we just found these sessions extremely practical and helpful. We did that through the Zoom class, and the Zoom classroom is in your syllabus, the link. So memorize the link, but it's also in your G drive. It's also in the eCamp. I put it in many places so that, I forgot where the Zoom link is. I'm going to tell you the best way. This is the way I do it. I use Google Calendar. The school uses Microsoft Calendar, and that's okay, but I use Google Calendar. And in my Google Calendar, I just set up a repeating Wednesday, Sunday, 8 a.m., in my case to 11 a.m., just to be safe, appointment. And in my appointment note, or actually in my appointment address, I have my Zoom link. So 30 minutes before, appointment pops up, and I can just click the Zoom link, and voila, I'm there. Okay, I find that the easiest, but use whatever you normally use to book appointments. But do book the appointments. Wednesdays and Sundays at 8 a.m. Dallas time until, to be safe, 10 p.m. I would say 8 a.m. till 10 a.m., not 10 p.m. Okay, so set up your Zoom. Zoom also has Zoom support. So again, just like the eCampus, it has its separate support area within the IT support, and plenty of it. But to be honest, nobody needed it. Zoom is so easy, so intuitive, so robust. And I'm not a Zoom salesman. I don't own stock in the company. I'm just so impressed by it because I've used all the software programs, and they have their good moments and bad moments, but Zoom has definitely been the easiest and most effective to allow us uninterrupted discussion using actual video and PowerPoint. And that's across all countries in the world. I have students in Nigeria, there's Kenya, we're flying in airplanes. I mean, just really crazy stress tests. So I keep mentioning IT help. So here's the main IT help page, and I actually include an address up there. But again, the way I find it, I Google TAMU IT. And the first thing that comes up, because I found it once before, is...
Texas A&M.
Moment, I had to pause for a second, because every time I say Google, I forget my Samsung Google-enabled phone. Whatever the Google voice comes on, the equivalent of Siri, and it reminds me that she's there. Okay, so for our Texas A&M IT support, again, I've already told you it's 365, 7, so that's every day of the week, all blah, blah, blah. I have called it, at 2 a.m. because I do all my writing for my treatises between around 9 p.m. at night and literally 5 in the morning. I'll crash somewhere between 4 and 5, much of the chagrin of people who know me. But because I also sometimes forget and just dial them to ask them a question, and it's like, it's 2 in the morning, do not call me. So IT help has been there for me. I also do class recordings and so forth late at night. So and if you what, I know that some of the students in fall, that's when you did your reading or so forth, and so all of a sudden I can't access the video, something's not working. Voila, TAMU IT, Googled it, poof, I get the web page. They have a telephone number, they have a chat, they have an email address, service cat, it's all there. You also can actually, through your Texas A&M account, buy student price software, and you can only buy it once every 3 years. But I recall I bought the Microsoft Office package. I mean, I don't remember the exact price, but I remember it was so low. It's like, my God, they're giving it away. I mean, it was like $5, $10. It was just so low. I was like, you might as well just give it away at that point. But I'd have to charge at least $1 because for the licensing to make it a contract. But there are some other good software on there that I can't recall what it is, but I've downloaded it myself. Also, they have Dell discounts. We're a Dell university. I mean, Dell, state of Texas, makes sense. And so I think it was on the Dell website, but there's somewhere on the TAMU address, just type TAMU and Dell, and you'll pull up a web page that tells you if you are buying computer equipment, if it's possible for you as a student, even though you're working at a big firm or a big company, it's for personal use, for our education purpose, that is, then you can buy it. If your company doesn't already have a Dell discount or what have you. If you prefer Apple, I'm not saying Apple's not good. We don't have an Apple discount. Okay, so let's move on to one of the final slides, which is our library or electronic resources. This is a little confusing, so that's why I have 2 slides on the board. We have the main campus university libraries, which are all the libraries but for the law library. The law library, eventually, it'll all connect, but for right now, there's still 2 separate entry points. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you see Texas A&M University Libraries. Guess how I get there? TAMU in my Google with the word library behind it. But yes, I could save it, and I can't remember the address off my head, which is why I just Google it. But it's probably something like library.tamu.edu. And but in the library, I have in the green button we'll see databases at the top row, databases. So under those databases, you have like OECD and a variety of financial valuation databases like marketresearch.com or what have you, Stata, and just a whole variety of resources. Well, all resources of our university, and it's one of the biggest spending universities for resources. So it's much more than I've ever gone through everything for the medical school, for the business school, for the school of government, and so on. We have the economics program. So you'd click on a resource, and then it will ask you, for your TAMU ID and your TAMU password to get in. For the law type resources like IBFD, International Bureau of Physical Documentation, or CCH, or whatever you use, tax analysts, that you access through the right hand part of this screen. You see the words electronic resources. Yes, electronic resources, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 down on your far right. You click on that. Again, you find the resource. They're alphabetical, their topic, they're like the main campus is. Let's say it's IBFD, so I look under I. It's probably the first resource. I click on it, and again, it asks me for my, actually this one asks you for your UIN and password. But that's how you access the resources. And I encourage you to, if you're not familiar with resources that you don't already use at work, use us to become familiar with them. So if you've never used the IBFD, go check out the IBFD. In general, you don't have to use the resources to be in our program, to be in the courses. We're providing you what you need to know, and you're already busy at work and you don't have a lot of time to do separate research. But if you want to do separate research, we have made it, we've given you as powerful research tools as possible. You can get a LexisNexis password by contacting the library. So on the right-hand side of the screen, the law library has, catalog. How do I, set up Lexis? How do I set up my Westlaw? How do I do my Bloomberg Law, which is formerly B&A account, and so on. So, and then of course, the access to the library itself. So I encourage you, if you have time and appetite for further research, to leverage the resources that we provide. Now, in some courses that are heavy research or more like paper thesis oriented, obviously you're in those courses you would use these and be directed to use them more extensively. We're not exactly doing that at this point. We are going to be teaching valuation databases and having them present themselves like a royalty stat and Thomson OneSource, and so for those you will be directed how to use those to make sure we're all on the same page when we leave this course. Obviously, if you've been using them in your practice all the time, it's going to be much less interesting for you, but perhaps the case study that we use to explore the database will be interesting for you. So you'll save time, you'll know the process already of how to use the database, but because of that, you'll have more time to spend on actualizing the case study within your team and helping them also, because we do use a colleague-to-colleague model, team-based learning model, which means if I know something that you don't know, I help you to know it and vice versa. So if I'm an accountant, you're a lawyer, and you don't understand how to read a balance sheet, I'm gonna show that to you. I'm gonna teach you that, but I don't know how to find a regulation or how to analyze a regulation, then you're gonna help me, and that's how we build a strong, sticky network in this program. It's one of the reasons why we have economists, accountants, lawyers in the same, and actually in all my programs. I have those three groups because each has something to learn from the other. Okay, and with that, I'm going to see you in Zoom. When am I going to see you in Zoom? I know I've said it 5 times. Let me say it a 6th. Wednesday. So I'm going to see you Wednesday at 8 a.m. Texas time, which in the syllabus I have, representative time zones of where that is for you. So we have a student in California, 6 a.m. We have a student in Shanghai, 10 p.m. Indonesia, I think it was 9 p.m. and so on. So, be sure to check out and make sure the time zone's correct. We do not have to worry about, for course number 1, time zone change. In course number 2, we do have to worry about time zone change. And because countries have time zone changes at different days of the year to make it really confusing, during the second course, I already have it in the syllabus, like be aware on March 9th, the United States moves to daylight savings time, and thus 8 a.m. for Texas time becomes 9 a.m. In course number 2, I have that. But you have to check what time that is in your jurisdiction. Like in Brazil, we move between a 3-hour and a 6-hour, I think a 6-hour, maybe 5-hour difference in time throughout the year. We move there and back. So I know with China on the daylight savings time, it remains 10 p.m. Because that was what my benchmarks were, California and China. And then everybody in between would be sorted out. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you in Zoom. Remember, what are we doing Wednesday? You're going to be introducing yourselves to each other, and I'm going to be facilitating that. But how do I facilitate it? Because you actually listened to my video and did what I said to do, which is please go into your forum and upload a social biography so that you can read each other's and I can read them and help move the discussion and networking and team-based building along on Wednesday. Bruno will be with us Wednesday, of course, because he's the first case study. And so for those of you who went through fall, you already know how to do case studies. So, okay, that'll be a little bit boring. I'll save it for the end so you can drop off if you want. But for those of you who are new, you'll stay on and we're going to show you how the case studies actually work in practice. And I guarantee you, if you stay for both courses and you go through, we call it 12 weeks, but it's really 14 because we all agreed internally in the last course to extend it because it was such a good discussion, I like to think, that you'll have a lot of different case studies under your belt with different scenarios, meeting different people, and you'll have different new perspectives that you will bring to the workplace. And that by itself, I mean, that's why we add value. You're going to have a network, and you're going to have new solutions to old problems. Added value, this course. Okay, so thank you very kindly for joining me for this past basically hour. You're probably watching this video on YouTube because that's the easiest way to get it to you. Obviously if you don't have eCampus access yet, and but the rest of the videos will be embedded in your eCampus, and of course I'll have backup to the Google Drive for those of you who find it easier to watch it there. Again, thank you very kindly, and look forward to seeing you Wednesday, 8 a.m. Texas time.